things here that went through the winter, and this is something that's happened in our cold frame. We've had plants that have gone to seed, and it makes them a little bitter. So if it were lettuce, for example, or some of you have had some of the collards and some of the things out of the cold frame, it doesn't taste as good once they go to seed. But having gone to seed is a positive thing, right, Joni?
Yes, because that's how you get the next generation of plants. So for example, I think the most amazing thing is one seed produced this plant. And now this plant is flowering, and if you look up and down the flower stalk, you're going to see the beginnings of the seed pods. And every one of these is going to get longer, and the seed is going to set, and you're going to have maybe 8 or 9 seeds per pod. So just look at that and try to figure out, who would like to guess how many seeds this plant is capable of producing? So that's the magic of multiplication right there with plants, how one plant can produce so many seeds. Even think of one pumpkin seed producing a number of pumpkins, and all the seeds in that one pumpkin, in each pumpkin. So they do have a multiplier effect. So this is how traditionally gardeners and farmers would save their seeds. They would save them, they didn't buy them at the store, they saved them from the crops, and they would select the ones that did the best. And that's how over time we got all these heirloom varieties, because they were selected over generation after generation for having certain qualities that the gardeners or farmers really appreciated. But yes. And, we have some peas that are just starting to germinate. Looks like they're planted on the 13th of March, and they are still way behind the other ones I showed you that I started on the 14th that were indoors. These are much shorter. But what I wanted to show you was garlic. So garlic grows from cloves, and these were planted last fall in October. And just because we're going to try and show you the process, I'm going to actually, it's too early to pull one out, but I'm going to pull one out. Well, I better not pull this one. I'll pull out the ones that are smaller, because this one's really hanging in there tight. So over here, I wanted to show you. These are some garlic I just found in February, late February, and they were in a bag I'd forgotten in the garage, and they were starting to sprout. So I said, well, why not just plant them? So I had them started for a workshop to show some teachers, and then after I was done, I decided to put them in the ground. So they should come out fairly easy, but you can see ooh, boy, you heard those roots, huh? So what you plant is this one little clove, and over time, and this will happen in like June, this will start multiplying and producing more, and you have the entire bulb of garlic, and then that's what you would plant, each individual one. So I'm going to put this back in here and pretend nothing happened. Okay, I never pulled you out. But they normally take, so you can see something that was planted over winter, and they had no protection over winter. They went through the entire winter just like that. And so they're really strong now. If I pull them, the bulbs will just be starting to get a little bit bigger. But we leave them alone, they can multiply, and at the end of June or so, we can pull them out and we'll have, giant cloves of garlic. So planted at the right time, not planted at the right time. And you can see the difference in growth habits. So each plant has its own window when it's good to plant them, and if you step outside the window, you don't get quite the growth that you would want to have.
The next thing we want to talk about goes back to the host. Maybe not so much of a good idea because there is a predator, and that is plants that act as repellers, not hotels, not the butterfly protector or the butterfly attractor, but the one that says, like garlic, you don't want to come here, go someplace else. And we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll talk about plant communities, which are the three sisters, and also plants that shade other plants and provide natural sort of ecosystems or microsystems.
And some organic gardeners believe strongly in planting plants that are repellents, and garlic is supposed to be one of the repellents, and they even make sprays that are supposed to be repellent with garlic and I think hot sauce. So some people use that, so you can, and what that does is the smell of the garlic kind of disguises the actual smell of the plant that the pests would be attracted to, and they also find those smells repellent. Another thing we do is we do prevention, which is where we have those covers over there, the row covers. That's a barrier, so it excludes them, and so they can't get to it, so we prevent the problem from ever happening. And that takes care of that, because we never have to go in there and pick the worms or anything off of that. And then the next thing we do is hand picking of the insects. So things like the Colorado potato beetle and things like that, we actually go and we check the leaves and we see the eggs, we squish them. because at the egg stage they don't have legs, they can't move, and we can really get good control that way. If we let them mature and then they're mobile and they can move around, then it becomes even more difficult to catch them. So just like with the weeds, when you try to control pests, you want to get them in the early stages when they're still small. The egg stage is the most vulnerable stage there is. So in terms of pest control, that's what we do. We also have a few biological pesticides. We can use something called dipel or thuricide. It's a bacteria that can cause the cabbage worms, it can cause bad things to happen to their stomach. So we can use that. For the fire ants, which we do get a lot of, I use another biopesticide called spinosad, and that we make a drench from it, and that is another soil-borne bacteria that actually is very effective against not only fire ants but against caterpillars and beetles. So it's a pretty effective biopesticide that was found in the soil.
So do you recommend come and get it?
Come and get it, yes. So come and get it is the spinosad in a bait form. And they just mix it with corn gluten, and then they put it down there. And then the idea of that is that they take the bait down to where the queen is, because in a fire ant colony, if you don't get the queen, she's just going to keep reproducing. So using the bait, the idea is to try and to get the queen. So that was our other thing. Also, we were talking about interplanting. If you recall, when we looked at the collards, I had the collards growing down the center of that bed, and then I had kohlrabi growing on the outside. So the kohlrabi will come, it will form probably by May. We can harvest the kohlrabi because they'll be ready, and then the collards can go through all summer into the fall. So one crop can stay there longer and get more space, while the other crop, the early crop, we can pull out. So interplanting can be done with things like lettuce and broccoli. You know, the broccoli takes longer, the lettuce comes up. At some point you can pull the lettuce out because it's getting hot, and then the broccoli can remain. So interplanting is a way of making better use of a small space. And we do a lot of that because our beds are fairly small, and we need to maximize what we can grow in a small space. So a lot of times when people plant vegetables, you'll see in the vegetable garden they'll have a planting of marigolds around them, and the marigolds are supposed to be repellent. There is a microscopic worm called a nematode in the soil, and a particular type of marigolds called the French marigolds. They are supposed to, through the roots, what they call exudates, have things that can be repellent to nematodes. So some people really, they swear by that, but we also plant marigolds because they're so pretty. And they kind of can naturalize here too. So in this garden in the summer, if you come out, you'll find marigolds that have come up on their own because the seeds just scattered. And then you'll also find zinnias. We'll have zinnias popping up, and sunflowers. So those are 3 flowers that are annuals that just pop up all over the garden, and usually we just let them grow where they want to. So this garden is very different in the summer. So this is our herb garden, this little bed here, and we've got a number of things growing in here. We have some lavender on either corner, and then we have some thyme here. We've got chives here and over there, and then we also have some lemon verbena, which is quite fragrant. And then over here, where it seems empty right now, we also have turmeric growing. So turmeric will come back again. We have found it can, once it establishes, it can come back again. So it's hard to find them, but in the summer the turmeric will come out. So this is kind of our little medicinal herbal bed, and we quite enjoy it. And I've actually harvested some of the thyme recently and took it home and dried it out, so that was fun. So this is our little orchard here in the community garden. So because it's a community garden, in many of the plots people grow their own fruits and veggies, but in this area here, because it's a community fruit orchard, we share whatever grows in here together. And so this is a really nice fig tree here, and just to show you, these different plants come in different varieties. I think this might be the brown turkey fig, but then over here is a smaller variety, and she's called Miss Figgy, so I really like her name. And then over here we've got an apple tree here, another fig, and then we have some small cherry bushes right here. And you can see one is dormant on this side, and then right over there one is blooming. So just depending on the variety, their bloom times might be different. Some bloom a little earlier than others. But hopefully we'll get some cherries and some figs this year. This is our little berry patch here, and we have blackberries growing. And you can see again, we talked about different varieties of the same fruit. So this variety is going to be a later fruiting one, because you can see right now it's just a lot of buds and not many leaves have come out. And then over here you can see one that has come out already, it's starting to bloom. So we're expecting to see wherever you see a flower is where you're going to have a fruit. And so we're expecting to get lots of berries from this plant here.
All right, so we're going to end with two things. Number one, this is a very elaborate compost. Ours is much more, let's say, humble, because we have a worm habitat that there are two actually at the very end of the coal frames, and there are cultivators, and the ones that you found when you were digging in the garden.
So this is just a little handful from our little compost bin, and I always like to show the kids the worms. These are red wiggler worms. These are great worms to have in a compost pile. They do a lot of breaking down of the organic material, and eventually, and this is almost on its way to being compost, because you can hardly tell what some of the original plant material was when you compare this to what we see over there, where you can see every leaf and every stem. So this is almost quite ready. So we'll let it go for a little bit longer. Let the worms do their thing.
So we're going to say goodbye to Joni and thank her for all the information and welcome her to Oasis. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.